And this item is about a notice of motion on private management companies operating public open space, flood alleviation schemes and estate roads. And it is on 163. So anybody that wants to look at that page, the pages, and get ready for adding your information to the debate. This is something that is close to my heart, because I actually brought residents of the pastures in Ulster to speak to this council. They presented a petition, but they also came to speak, and I spoke on their behalf. I can't remember how many years ago, but it was quite some years ago, about the conditions that were on their estate, about the way that private sector management companies were engaged and with the work, and the problems that they had. I went back and did a lot of research as a result of that, and found that the council had actually changed its policy on provision of open spaces, and actually changed and supported the idea of private management companies in 2005. So I was able to follow that up. Since that notice of motion was, which I seconded in council, there has actually been a lot of movement in government. The Competition and Markets Authority that was referred to at the time has now been taken up and is now being considered in government. And I know that we have people here that have followed that the way it has been raised in Parliament. But Councillor Coucher, I will bring you on first, and then I think Councillor Gist wants to update us.
Thank you. This instability was obviously created by government over 20 years ago, whereby I think trying to alleviate the financial responsibilities for local authorities, but it has actually created terrific instability and also unfairness. And I know that many councillors hear from their residents about how I pay my council tax and I also have to pay management charges for my particular area, and that is really unfair. I'm very pleased to say that this council has now changed its policy, and that we will not be in future in any way encouraging private management companies to come on and manage areas, and that will be an exceptional situation rather than the regular and the rule. And I must admit, I attended my parish council only last week to hear a developer saying we'll be putting all of their land associated with that development into a management company, and I had to say to him, no, you won't, because this council now has kind of stopped that unfairness and that procedure going forward. Where this notice of motion, I think, is very helpful, and I'm very pleased that we've had it, is what can we do for those residents who currently are suffering under existing management companies, totally unregulated, who can more or less do exactly what they want. And indeed, once again, in relation to Wellesbourne, we've got a management company desperately trying to flog off public open space, and potentially people thinking, oh, we'll be able to build houses on these parks and areas, which is just totally unfair and won't happen. But it's created an awful lot of work for those of us in trying to make sure that we are protecting those particular areas, because these management companies do not have an interest in this district. They are purely interested by finance, and it is not to our benefit, not to benefit of residents. So what we've suggested in relation to this notice of motion is that we should set up a task and finish group to see what we precisely can do to try and ameliorate the problems which existing residents have. And certainly it is my recommendation that we actually do go ahead with that, because this is one way of certainly presenting through to our two MPs because I think it may well require that we will need some legislative changes. And I know that Councillor Gist has been doing some work on that. Some of it may already be beginning to emerge, but I think we do need to crystallise that. And I think it is really important. So we have a recommendation here that we do set up such a task and finish group. We've set up in paragraph 131 actually the terms of reference for that task and finish group. But I think we'll need to have some structure there, because it's quite a very wide brief in relation to it, in terms of both taking evidence, but also looking at best practice of other authorities and other matters. And I think we'll need to be more focused if we can do something in a timely fashion, and this doesn't go on for a long period of time. But I do think it will be really important that we do engage both MPs in the process, because I think certainly there will be matters in relation to national legislation which will be important. Thank you.
Can I bring in the Deputy Chief Executive just on one of those points about the remit of the Task and Finish group, just to explain one item, and then I'll bring in Councillor Gist.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I had the privilege of attending the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, and part of the debate there related to the terms of reference for the group. There was some concern expressed, and I think we've got sympathy as officers with this, that point 6 in the reference, which is collating a central record of all sites where a private management company is operating, would be quite a significant piece of work that perhaps had a lower priority than some of the work that Councillor Couch has spoken about. And we wondered if this may be either sort of given a lower priority or deferred until a later stage in the process, bearing in mind we're trying to get a timely report back within 3 months from this group. So I just thought I'd raise that.
And Councillor Gist. And then Councillor.
Yes, Councillor Crump, I noticed there was, I would say, disquiet's perhaps too strong a word in OSC for the amount of work and the time scale. I was looking, and the government are planning to consult on this particular issue by the end of this year. So I was looking at the proposals in the spirit of collaboration, because I think we all want to help sort this out for residents. And my thought was, and I appreciate that we might need a bit more work, that we should try and identify the developments affected and then speak to residents, because I know we all think we know what the problems are, but obviously residents can actually tell us what the problems are, so that when the government does come out with a consultation for how they're going to legislate, we're able to respond to it as best as possible.
And I understand that you've actually done and looked at quite a lot of what has been raised in Parliament about the consideration of the Competition Markets Authority, and proposing potentially to change this piece of legislation, which at the moment is the problem, one of the problems for us, in that we can't retrospectively change legislation. So it would need government legislation. We can do a lot on what powers we have, but we are limited by until the legislation is changed. Marcia, are you able to expand on that one?
Thank you, Chair. In the report, under the legal implications, the position's explained quite clearly, so I won't reiterate too much there. And I may even ask, if that's okay with you, Chair, that Mr Careford comes in on one point. The first thing to note is that we absolutely cannot look back. There are no powers currently for the Council to do anything about the management companies where we have entered into certain 106 agreements, etc. Absolutely not. The other point to note is looking forward into the future. Yes, there is legislation that possibly is being considered by the government around this issue in light of the Competitions and Marketing Authority's input and what they found in their policy study. But we don't have a timeline on that that's been specified, so I don't want to raise expectations on that either. So just want to be absolutely clear on that. On the middle point that was referenced about what we, the Council, are doing now, I just wanted to be a bit clear about that, because I think there is an update to our local planning authority and decision-making process and policy under Part L. And that was only quite recently, so I'm handing over to John just to bring in and clarify on that, if that's okay with you.
Yes, thank you. So we adopted supplementary planning guidance on open space, and that is to certainly do more than encourage, but you know, we can't mandate it, but we can certainly strongly encourage companies to offer open space to, in the first instance, the parish, because we think it's best that the parish owns and maintains the open space in the first instance, and then it would come to us by default. But as Sir Cousin rightly says, you know, we can't, and the report in section 5 does stress we can't ban management companies. From a planning perspective, land ownership is not an issue. The planning issue is the open space provided, is it being maintained to the sufficient quality, and is it, you know, in their perpetuity for public use. So it's, I think, yeah, expectation management is key, but it's absolutely right that as a council we are listening to residents who are concerned and struggling with the charges that are being applied to the open space that they're now residing on. Can I just, while I've got the floor, as it were, Leader, can I just note in paragraph 5.1.1 there is a typo where it says agreements in the last sentence. It should say applications. So apologies for that slight error. Thank you.
And I'll bring in Councillor Pemberton, but this has been, you know, going on for a long, long time. And some of the, I mean, I know that I was present when one particular set of residents was discussing with the MP about what has happened on their public open space, and this needs a resolution, absolutely needs a resolution as soon as possible, and we must get that message across to government. But meanwhile, we have to manage what has gone wrong in the last 20 years within the district, within as far as our powers will allow us to do so. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. As members of Cabinet will know, I was the proposer of the motion and drafter of the motion, and it was actually deliberately kept quite wide to allow as much latitude as possible to be able to do work on this. This is a situation that we all agree at its very kindest has ended up with the law of unintended consequences, but is a situation that is, and it's not solely an issue in this district, it's around the country. And the monitoring officer is quite right to highlight that the silver bullet, if there is one, is legislation. Who knows when that legislation may come forward? Yes, a commitment towards the end of the year, but there is an awful lot going on with government at the moment. It may or may not get on the list. So the purpose of this motion is to set up a group that looks at the art of the possible as we currently stand, and to try and develop a toolkit that residents can use. And you're absolutely right, no, a management company cannot be forced out, but there are certain model agreements that allow for, in essence, a referendum by residents to actually change management companies. So there are mechanisms within some of these agreements to apply pressure. If a management company is not meeting its contractual obligations, it's about how we can provide some advice to residents and ward members about how they point that out to management companies in discussions with management companies. There are areas where it may be that we can be more effective in our enforcement. For example, if a public open space is not being maintained or it's not being built to spec. So there are, accepting that legislation is the ultimate, we're not in control of that. The purpose and the reason for it being quite wide, and I do take on board the question of it may be difficult to collate, it may or may not, but to actually get to some practical measures in a toolkit. And you know, a number of us are engaged with these management companies and discussions, and I and the MP have been party to discussions with one of the major house builders and probably the leading management company. And there are ways to bring pressure to bear. So it's about getting that knowledge out and learning what other people are doing up and down the country. So I think I take them on board. I think members need to be doing some heavy lifting with these task and finish groups. It's not just a case of getting officers to do this stuff. But I would, it's clear that you're going to go with this, but I think I just wanted just to get that out there, that we understand, or I certainly understand, and I think Councillor Junior, as the seconder, understands there are constraints, but that doesn't mean to say we can't be smart about how we do this and how we support residents. And that's, I think, what we're looking for, and finding, what's worked elsewhere, what we can do, how we can be smart, how we can support residents, and then hopefully government comes to the rescue further down the line.
And I'm going to bring Councillor Rolfe in, and I certainly would like to be able to, at this stage, actually say that I move the recommendation, because I feel so strongly about it. But also, I will bring to your attention that in the last year's budget, we also brought forward a Green Spaces officer who can help with this process going forward. So that is also something that we need to note. Councillor Rolfe, and then Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I personally am delighted this is coming forward. I had a meeting with a group of residents on a public open space in my ward on Friday, and it transpired that one of my residents is paying £43 a month for the maintenance of his one parking space, literally one parking space. I think the other issue that we have is not just about the increased cost, but the fact that the work isn't being done. I mean, I've got a whole area in one of my wards where the work is not done, and it's not done well enough. It's not done regularly enough, and people are paying more and more. So I'm not putting my name forward for the task and finish group, but I can easily give you details, whoever it chairs that group, of certain management companies in my ward. Thank you.
Councillor Passingham.
Yeah, I fully support everything that's been said. I've got a large number of new estates in my ward, and I have an awful lot of issues that are current. But it's very timely that the new S106 enforcement officer is in place, and I had an email off her last week saying she was now looking into 5 of the new estates and into the S106 agreements, and she's also sending out the new Green Spaces officer to survey and monitor the open spaces. So we should have some good feedback. Well, I certainly will have some good feedback by the time of the task and finish group.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Crump. Councillor Curtis, did you go first, actually? I think you were first.
It's just a very agree with everything that's been said. It's just a very small query, really, on the wording in 133. I think there's a sentence missing. Whilst the subgroup of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, OSC, something, given the issue, I think, can that be corrected? Does it?
Could you just tell us again? Was it 1.3.2?
1.3.3. Whilst the
3.
subgroup, yes.
The Deputy Chief Executive will comment.
I think the paragraph was perhaps a little clumsily worded. It is okay. The inference is that it allows the task and finish group to call on a wider membership where there's experience within the council, or should be led by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. If there are other members with expertise, and this was a point that was brought out at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, they were keen to not to be limited to their own membership.
Thank you for the clarification, Tony.
Okay. Councillor Crump.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it was quite a large debate about this on Wednesday, keep on Wednesday, Friday, and obviously the other things as well is the flood alleviation schemes that we've talked about the state roads, we talk about public open spaces, but I think the flood alleviation schemes are equally as important as well. There's a couple of things that I think come forward on that. Yes, we agree. We think the membership of the task and finish group should be primarily drawn from Overview and Scrutiny, but not restricted to Overview and Scrutiny Committee members on this occasion, and we're not saying this creates a precedent either, but we think it's a wide enough subject, and bearing in mind who proposed this, and it's coming from Cabinet, we feel on this one occasion that we would be willing to have non-OSC members on this task and finish group. A couple of things on that. We realised that it should be a fact-finding exercise in order to provide evidence really to support the wider political and national debate, which, as Councillor Gist said, needs to be done by the end of the year. So we appreciate that, and obviously the timescales are quite tight, as in the similar report where you're doing the consultation in August and September. What we feel this is, it's a large piece of work, and we have concerns about the subsequent demand on officer resource to support this. We've also got another significant task and finish group going on to do with housing, and then we've also got the small matter of local government reorganisation, which I'm sure will be taking officer time as well. So what we find that we could potentially have difficulty meeting the 3-month deadline, especially for a comprehensive report, whether we felt as we would produce an interim report within the 3-month timescale, and then a fuller one as soon as possible after that. But we feel that the 3-month timescale, especially the amount of work, limited officer resource time, and if we want to make it meaningful, we think we could be struggling to do a full 3-month full report within 3 months. We're not trying to make excuses, but I think we think we could get some headlines out, but again, I was criticising the previous report about lack of information on the local government reorganisation, about the lack of details and vagaries. I think it'd be hypocritical if we started producing a report that was slightly vague and unclear. So I think we can do something, but I think a full report in 3 months is optimistic. We also felt that, again, if we could just have some final clarity around the terms of reference. So again, if we can narrow these down a bit, then we can concentrate on areas and don't go down blind alleys and use valuable officer time on those as well. I think that would be helpful. But we agree in principle. We also felt that the ward member guide would certainly have merit, and we also talked about other areas where ward member guides could be helpful. But yeah, this would be particularly helpful because I know, many councillors have similar issues throughout their wards, and it is frustrating both for them and for the residents as well. So a user guide of rights and responsibilities and who can do what, etc., and what we can and can't do would certainly help clarify the position and give a consistent position as well, because often sometimes people say, well, I've spoken to X councillor and they've said this, and then I've spoken to Y councillor and they've said Y, which is, so if we get some clarity around that. There's lots of merits in this.
Thank you very much. Before I bring in Councillor Coles, it will depend upon the abilities of the chair to bring this forward. I actually chaired after the climate change notice of motion, I chaired the task and finish, and we were finished within 3 months. It really does depend upon having a very, very clear and tight guidelines on what you will undertake. And might I suggest that it's not only about what the District Council's existing powers are to do what we can now, but also get, what would be done differently if the law was to be changed. Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. I think the strength of this is that it does have a definitive timeline. If what is required doesn't fit into that timeline, I think we need to rewrite the timeline with as much done as possible within the 3 months. I think it's very important because I think we all know, even as parents, as soon as possible can be stretched into centuries, and that it is actually a task and finish, not a task and finish as soon as I can, because speaking as a parent, I've been rolling it out for decades. So I think that having this timeline is extremely important, and I think we really want more than headlines after 3 months. I think this is an extremely important piece of work, and we do need to give the the priority it needs to this. So if it can be broken into, we anticipate we're doing this within 3 months, but this will take longer, that would be helpful, because then we can actually see what we are having back. I would rather have a timeline that says this, and this will be done, and then the end of the timeline is this isn't done, but by after another 3 months or something like that. Because, you know, as we say, it is important, and we need to know what data and recommendations to deal with this extremely serious issue are coming forward for us to consider and see what we can put into place to change things.
I'll ask Councillor Gist to come in, and then I will wrap up and move the recommendation. Councillor Crump, did you want to come back at all?
Yeah, it's just a couple of points on that. Well, it was misunderstood or I've misheard. No, we didn't not commit to producing some information. We were saying about the practicalities of the 3-month time scale, and you know, it might be done in that place, but we are putting out, that's the point of having a scrutiny committee, to point out any potential flaws or issues with a certain project or certain timescale. With 3 months, we are saying there are potential other demands on officer time. Some of the areas are quite big, so we needed more clarity on what to include and what areas we're going to do, because, like I say, we could be going down blind alleys. And we were saying that we wouldn't produce a full comprehensive report, but if it came to it, we would produce an interim report within the 3 months timescale and then produce a fuller report at a later date.
Okay, and it might be, I'll come back on to item 7, the proposal, proposal 6, as to that might be one of the ones that will take time, or whether or not we have to decide whether or not at this point it is necessary. But rather look at the ones where the problems are is our priority. Councillor Gist, and then I'll draw to a conclusion.
I think that this is really a matter of just us communicating with each other. I think until Task and Finish Group have had a chance to sort of look at this properly and identify sort of how they're going to prioritise the proposals, and then we need to talk to each other. My concern is that this legislation, if it is retroactive, could be the most important piece of legislation for our residents. What Councillor Pemberton was talking about, what councillors can do on the ground, could be really affected by this. So it's vital that we are able to respond to the consultation, in my opinion. And if, you know, the workload is just too much, then we need to talk to each other so we can prioritise and get it right, because it's obviously we all feel the same about it. So.
Okay, I'm moving a recommendation, and this is a recommendation to Council, that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee establish a Task and Finish group to investigate, report and identify solutions in respect of private management companies operating public open spaces, flood alleviation schemes and estate roads across the district. Now, I will do a slight alteration on the remit. The remit is set out in paragraph 1.31, but it has been raised that the proposal number 6 should not be the priority. It's more making sure that we engage with and take evidence, understand the legal landscape, identify good practice and successors, engage with MPs, establish the position of the county council, and then make recommendations going forward. The collation could be something that could take a little bit longer. So that is, if we establish that one as a slightly less priority for the Task and Finish group, that means that we would get a report coming forward, and then the work can carry on, making sure that we get that collation ongoing as the Green Space Officer is able to do that moving forward. So I'm putting that for the Monitoring Officer. Can we just bring in?
Just very quickly, I may have missed it, forgive me. I didn't know who was proposing and who was the seconder.
I'm the proposer, and Councillor Coucher is the seconder. Okay. Can I put that to the vote for the Cabinet? Are you all in favour of that as amended? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your consideration on this matter. And we